Story 1. I think this section is crystal clear. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evidences a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Story 2. It is remarkable how many of the original grievances, taxation without representation, abuse of power, ignoring the will of the people, still resonate today, just in different forms. The Declaration was not just about freedom, it was about accountability. It seems we could use a modern version posted on a few doors in Washington, District of Columbia. Story 3. The Declaration of Independence was a manifesto against tyranny. Story 4. A declaration of the people of the 50 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with a former executive, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among people, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. Such has been the patient sufferance of these people, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the presidency of Donald J. Trump is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has obstructed the free press, barring journalists from access to public briefings and retaliating against news organizations critical of his rule. He has deployed federal troops against peaceful assemblies, overriding the authority of state governors and militarizing civic spaces. He has circumvented judicial rulings, ordering deportations and wall construction even when courts demanded restraint. He has granted sweeping pardons to political allies and rioters, subverting the rule of law and depriving victims of justice. He has imposed national tariffs under dubious emergencies, cutting off economic trade and levying burdens without the consent of Congress. He has curtailed immigration, invoking wartime powers to deport entire communities and obstructing lawful asylum claims. He has revoked protections for marginalized citizens, dismantling civil rights laws and banning diversity and equity policies nationwide. He has attempted to undermine the independence of the judiciary, attacking judges and prompting the courts to create emergency task forces to defend their legitimacy. He has coerced legal professionals by threatening law firms that represented political opponents. He has incited fear, labeling border migration an invasion, deploying troops against civilians, and fostering domestic unrest. He has denied the jurisdiction of Congress, preventing it from checking his authority and enforcing policies through executive decree alone. He has violated international norms, attempting to deport individuals to dangerous conflict zones in defiance of judicial orders. He has dismissed, undermined, or removed civil servants and prosecutors who challenged unlawful conduct. He has used his office to alter the foundations of justice, placing loyalty above law and rule above constitution. He has ignored the cries of the governed, spurning petitions and continuing harmful policies with impunity. We, therefore, the free citizens of the United States of America, given no longer voice in Congress, do appeal to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, and in the name and by authority of the good people of these states, solemnly publish and declare that these United States are, and of right ought to be, free of autocratic and plutocratic government, that they are absolved from all allegiance to Donald J. Trump, and that all political connection between them and the said president is and ought to be totally dissolved. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Story 5. NPR did a reading every 4th of July where they would have someone read the Declaration of Independence on air. When they did it during Trump's first term, Supporters of Make America Great Again reacted strongly, saying they were criticizing the president with a made-up speech. Story 6. We just passed a bill that is counter to the core arguments of the Declaration. We essentially repealed it and gave the throne to a failed real estate investor. Story 7. This day has now become satirical. As Andrew Ryan, who is not a good role model, said, "No gods or kings, only man." We often get in trouble for advocating violence, but it is right there in the Declaration. When a government becomes corrupt and no longer serves its people, it needs to be removed by whatever means are necessary. However, I have to be careful about what I openly advocate for, so I will add please do this peacefully or by other appropriate means. Story 8. There are some difficult issues there, ranging from blocking trade to making things difficult for immigrants. Story 9. He has refused his assent to laws. Sounds familiar when the United States Congress needs to pass basic human rights and someone is golfing instead. The more things change, the more they declare independence from accountability. Story 10. I have more respect for my toilet paper than many Americans seem to have for their actual constitution, at least those in charge. Story 11. NPR did its annual reading of the Declaration of Independence on Donald Trump's first 4th of July as president and received many complaints that the list of grievances was aimed at him. Story 12. What is trademark dispute doing that is not being taken to court? What has been taken to court, ruled against him, and he is not following? Story 13. For anyone who has not read it in a while, you can listen to a reading of the Declaration of Independence. I fast-forwarded through the disclaimers about language at the beginning. Story 14. If tyranny ever came to this land, it will be in the guise of fighting a foreign enemy. John Adams. The greatest calamity which could befall us would be submission to a government of unlimited powers. Thomas Jefferson. A popular government without popular information nor the means of acquiring it is but a prologue to a farce or a tragedy or perhaps both. Knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power knowledge gives. James Madison. Overgrown military establishments are, under any form of government, inauspicious to liberty and are to be regarded as particularly hostile to Republican liberty. George Washington. If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude than the animated contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. Samuel Adams. Story 15. Nothing will go the way anyone thinks it will. The government of the United States of America has systematically removed and restricted access to vital humanitarian resources for its citizens for the last 45 years. After the broad prosperity of diverse peoples in the nation and the rapid uplift of the lower classes following the economic and social successes of the civil rights movement of the 1960s, there has been an active effort to subjugate working-class families, targeting people of color by exploiting long-simmering sentiments rooted in the traitorous legacy of the former Confederate South. The language of Project 2025 is that effort in action. What is being experienced now are the asinine plots of a decrepit population of wannabe Gilded Age robber barons and antebellum slave masters. However, the nation has 100 years of diversity engagement, attributed to the necessity of interaction between classes and cultures due to the early world wars and foreign invasions. The descendants of these ancestors have also had access to some of the most robust communication with various peoples around the world for 30 or more years as a nearly daily occurrence. Likewise, the ability to escape narrow confines of judgmental and toxic environments has further permitted individuals to pursue their passions and seek supportive communities comprised of chosen family. They have constructed new identities and expectations of life and the world around them based on their, albeit limited, means. The curiosity and understanding of the opportunities afforded to them have led to a rejection of the very ideals espoused in bad faith efforts of the government against their people. What everyone seems to forget is, A, the citizenry is highly educated despite the limitations of public education and is not at all ignorant of better options as they once were. B, the majority of the citizenry have nothing they hold dear enough to leverage engagement. C, There is a general apathy toward consequences to push back against the desires of the powerful due to points A and B. D. The people most invested in the horrors of the programs being forced upon the nation require active and enthusiastic engagement before they die because they are old. Young people in any great number want none of this. It will fail. Everyone will be hurt in the meantime, but at least the population will collapse and will likely not recover for many generations because who that is able would continue to sterilize themselves or depart the nation entirely for actual democratic nations. All that will remain are the people with no choice, who would never give their best to a system that will never offer reward, and the people who wanted this, who are woefully unprepared to support the system to which they have damned the rest. This will fail, and we all will suffer along with it. Do not help us. We do not want to be saved. Story 16. As an American, I love my country, not the government. We are angry that the former president is destroying our America. Story 17. I do not think they considered a population so unaware of how our government works that they would elect someone who despises America and its people. He even hates his followers and has criticized their ignorance, except when he said he loves uneducated people. Story 18. Dude, we get it. We are in trouble. We know we are in trouble. These people are fools, they outnumber us, and we will all get what they deserve. Honestly, I try not to think about it too much. Story 19. Maybe stop using all things related to Jeff Bezos and avoid shopping at Home Depot. Get rid of all things related to Meta. If any sports teams are sponsored by these individuals, call them out. Stop tolerating intolerance. Story 20. We do not have a king, but we have many uninformed workers who serve corporate leaders. Story 21. A lot of it hinges on the fact that it is a king doing it rather than an elected representative of the people. Story 22. It feels like we have come full circle. We have to stand up against the oppressors. What is shocking is the people who just gave up. Cowards. Story 23. I love all these foolish people on Reddit who act as if the United States of America is crumbling. We still are easily the best nation on this planet. We are not going anywhere. Happy birthday, America. Story 24. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. Unless I think you are illegal, then no. Story 25. I am reminded of the beginning of the Gettysburg Address. For 47 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. I am beginning to think maybe not. Maybe a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal cannot long endure. Story 26. Regardless of our political climate, the essence of the Declaration remains: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Never forget that. Story 27. The first self-evident truth is that all men are created equal. Donald Trump is on video from 2006 disagreeing. Well, it sounds beautiful, and it was written by some very wonderful and brilliant people, but it is not true. Story 28. My reaction is that it is bad enough that I have read Rise and Fall of the Third Reich and seen exactly the same things said by a fascist party driven by corruption and malice. Now, sitting down and reading an announcement created 250 years ago is directly relevant to the activities of an administration insisting that this is the way to preserve American freedom. No one passed elementary school history, no one paid attention in high school civics, and no one is reading this material. But why confuse people with the actual text of the Declaration of Independence? Story 29. Did you vote to take money from the elderly, the sick, and the poor and give it to billionaires? Did you vote to support a genocide with billions in weapons while withholding them from an ally defending itself from invasion? Did you vote to destroy the planet we live on for the sake of the ultra-rich being able to afford a 29th megayacht? No? Maybe we should remind our government that this country was founded on the simple slogan, no taxation without representation. Story 30. Let's take a quick rundown and see if any of our core grievances from back then apply now. He refused to approve laws necessary for the public good. He dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing his invasions of rights. He obstructed justice by preventing the establishment of independent judiciary systems. He made judges dependent on his will for their tenure and salaries. Abuse of military power. He kept standing armies in the colonies during peacetime without consent. He made the military superior to civil power. He quartered large bodies of armed troops among the colonists. He protected soldiers who committed crimes from punishment. Economic exploitation. He cut off trade with other nations. He imposed taxes without colonial consent. He deprived colonists of trial by jury in many cases. He transported colonists overseas for trial on pretended offenses. Violation of colonial autonomy. He abolished colonial laws and charters. He attempted to suspend colonial legislatures and rule by decree. He encouraged insurrections and incited violence among native tribes against the frontier. Story 31. Joe Biden told all Americans to get a vaccination in order to celebrate Independence Day with their family and friends. Story 32. I certainly do not feel free from tyrannical rule. He openly talks about sending United States citizens to foreign prisons where they shave your head and make you work all day. You effectively have no rights if Donald Trump or Immigration and Customs Enforcement decide to go after you. Story 33. I heard a new American citizen being interviewed yesterday. He said Americans take what we have for granted. He went on to say that we have no idea what it is like to live under tyranny, and we should leave this country to experience true oppression so that we can appreciate what we have. He is right. Story 34. Celebrating Independence Day and freedom today under the Trump administration does not feel authentic. Feels sad. Story 35. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for people to call out the actions of a leader who has undermined the principles of democracy, decency, and reason, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they declare the causes which impel them to speak. We hold these truths to be self-evident: that all people are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights. Among these are truth, justice, and the pursuit of a more perfect union. Whenever any leader becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to call them to account and to resist the abuses of power. The history of Donald J. Trump is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of division, self-enrichment, and the corrosion of democratic norms. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has undermined the rule of law, seeking to bend institutions of justice to his personal will. He has spread falsehoods deliberately and habitually, eroding trust in free elections and independent media. He has stoked the flames of division, exploiting fears and prejudices to inflame one group against another. He has sought to profit from the office of the presidency, placing personal gain above the public good. He has disregarded the counsel of experts and advisors, placing the nation's health, security, and standing at risk. He has encouraged insurrectionary acts against the peaceful transfer of power, threatening the very foundation of the republic. He has attacked judges, prosecutors, and others who uphold the law, seeking to make them instruments of his own protection. He has treated allies with contempt and adversaries with undue deference, diminishing the nation's influence and honor. He has derided the vulnerable, mocked the afflicted, and coarsened public discourse. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by further injury. A leader whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a threat to democracy is unfit to govern a free people. We, therefore, as concerned citizens of these United States, appealing to the judgment of history and the conscience of humankind, do solemnly publish and declare that Donald J. Trump has betrayed the principles upon which this nation was founded, that his conduct is incompatible with the office he held and the trust of the people, and that it is the duty of all who cherish liberty and justice to oppose such abuses. And for the support of this declaration, we mutually pledge to each other our voices, our votes, and our vigilance. Story 36. If you really want to understand what to think about Donald Trump, you have to go much further back. Plato talked about democracies and their inevitable outcomes. He described a tyrant who would originate from the wealthy but would betray them and exploit the masses to gain power. From Plato's perspective, the Declaration of Independence marked the beginning of a story now nearing its end. Freedom, after all, means the freedom to choose tyranny. Story 37. I think it is hypocritical nonsense from the start. However, the so-called merciless savages were my grandparents, so I cannot buy into the propaganda. Story 38. To give you a more local response, the independence celebrations where I am are somewhat muted. This administration has threatened its own people with expulsions, exile, or imprisonment while removing history, public assistance, and other supports. This government no longer appears to serve the people. It has shown many here racist overtones that seem unwilling to stop. The hateful rhetoric towards others demonstrates that everything many have learned growing up about being in the United States of America, being free, helping others, second chances, the melting pot, being what you want to be, lending aid and assistance here and abroad, and the diversity that makes the United States what it is a sham under this administration. There is much more I would like to say, but I am shaking my head at what is occurring. Story 39. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Story 40. We do not have a king. I am still trying to figure out where all this no king outrage was when the government was overstepping with COVID-19 lockdowns. There certainly was not outrage on this site because Democrats are good and Republicans are bad. Story 41. Celebrating with family and fireworks. The United States of America is greater than any one person being president. The country will continue to endure through groups pulling the country both left and right, but the center will pull and course correct from either extreme. Story 42. I think the king should pardon them if they repent, promise to return the Native Americans all their land, pay proper restitution for the genocide, and use proper English. After all, not all of them are cultureless brutes. Story 43. The real problem is that propaganda has successfully convinced many people that the compromise required in a democracy is tyranny and that an authoritarian king is the solution. Story 44. Dear King Charles III, coffee is superior to tea. All fries, chips, are created equal but should not be drowned in vinegar without consent. Mostly, a decent superhero movie should feature Americans with American accents, not undercover British actors named Benedict. Story 45. Today, I am reminded of this quote from Thomas Jefferson. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. When I was a child, it seemed excessive to think that the basic freedoms I took for granted needed to be constantly fought for. But here we are. The tree of liberty is being starved to death and needs to be watered. Story 46. Half the population of the United States are reliving the old taxation without representation problem in modern times. Abusive political tactics, such as illegally denying Supreme Court picks and redistricting, have locked the country into a Make America Great Again controlled nation for the foreseeable future. It does not help that the Democratic Party is ineffective and lacks resolve, attempting to work with aggressive opponents who overpower them every time. However, in politics, playing dirty often leads to winning. Liberals are too focused on the wealthiest among us, and all the misguided social issues have caused the rest of the population to suffer. The system is rigged now, and it is likely to remain that way for a long time. Story 47. Laugh out loud. Keep these posts and replies coming. This content is one of the main reasons Donald Trump lost the last election. Enjoying the tears. Story 48. A prince whose character is marked by every act that defines a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Story 49. Doesn't really. As annoying as things are now, nothing has happened to suggest our system of governance has been subverted. We have to wait for the next elections to see. Hopefully, the transfer of power after we defeat the Republicans will be peaceful. Story 50. Two things. First, the Federalists wanted elites in control of the government because they did not think common people were smart enough to understand what was happening. They did not want kings. They wanted an elitist society to control the masses. Second, conservatives have disregarded the Constitution for the last 10 years, and I do not see it stopping anytime soon. Story 51. If you read it out loud in the right place, MAGA supporters will attack you for bad-mouthing their Lord and Savior Blump. I would say it applies to the current political climate. Story 52. The Declaration was written in the spirit of optimism about the great potential that the founders saw in this country. If they could rise up today, I think you would hear them speaking with a single voice. What have you done to this country? Story 53. It is not perfect, but it is better than the other alternatives. If your objective is to be rewarded for your success, the United States of America is the best place. If your objective is to be provided for by the government, that is, your fellow taxpayers, you need to move to a socialist country. There are many to choose from in Europe. By the way, I am celebrating the independence of our country from those spotted dick-eating, tea-sipping British people with my family in Texas. Story 54. My big question is, if Independence Day is about the Declaration of Independence, which states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal," why do some Black people and Native Americans still celebrate a document that, in practice, was not initially meant to include them? Is this an example of Stockholm Syndrome? Story 55. Do not call the person who wants to be a king a king. Literally, you are all willing falsehood into existence like a seance. Story 56. I don't really have a problem with King Charles. He is somewhat of a nerd, but seems okay. The citizens of the United Kingdom seem to like him. I still prefer having our own country instead of having the British in charge of us. Story 57. I want to be clear. Throughout the entire Trump administration until a few weeks ago, individual federal district judges were issuing nationwide injunctions against lawful and justified presidential actions. Additionally, an unelected parliamentarian in the Senate unilaterally decided that a major portion of the Build Back Better Act was not allowed in the bill. If there are tyrants or kings in America, it certainly is not Donald Trump. Perhaps it is better to look inward before accusing others of being kings. Story 58. I have cerebral palsy, and my government is undertaking intentional eugenics against me. The Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are disregarded by the grand old party. Story 59. Republicans. Immigration and customs enforcement will continue removing undesirables until white privilege is restored to a level that will keep true Americans from ever being challenged again. America, hold my beer. Story 60. The difference is that we voted for this nonsense, and we have the ability to vote to end it. Congress could end this today if the people pressured them to do so, but we are not, so they will not. I am not happy with what is going on, but it is exactly what we voted for. Story 61. We have nobody to complain to, and we are yet to have a common enemy. Until the Make America Great Again rank and file wake up and realize the top 1% are using them, then it is a fascist takeover with tens of millions cheering. People now do not want independence. They want to feel like they are winning. I know the colonies were divided on loyalty to the king, but the colonies as a whole banded together to become independent. There is no way we could have that many people come together to collectively stop Donald Trump or any common enemy. No national strikes, no protests like the Boston Tea Party. Story 62. We do not have a king. Today is no King's Day. 249 years ago, we declared our independence from any sovereign, and we the people became our own sovereign. The fact that 77 million Americans have re-elected Donald J. Trump and rejected the Marxist left ideology is proof that this historical experiment in representative democracy is working. Story 63. That is a great question, and honestly, it is kind of wild how many of those original grievances still echo today, just dressed in modern clothes. Back then, it was imposing taxes without consent. Now, it is corporations influencing tax laws that benefit the ultra-wealthy while the average person struggles with cost of living increases. Cutting off trade with all parts of the world sounds a lot like protectionist policies and supply chain chaos. And let us not even get started on refusing to pass laws for the accommodation of large districts of people. Hello, gerrymandering and voter suppression. It really makes you think, are we still rebelling against tyranny, or just managing it with better branding? Story 64. It never did. Political capitalism was not a concept when our founding fathers wrote that important document. Now, money, not armies, rules the world. The financial crisis of 2008 proved this when the United States, in order to save the global economy, bailed out all the corrupt banks under the threat of their closure. They could never have predicted or foreseen this. Sadly, it is too late now. Money controls elections and determines which politicians stay or go. Story 65. It's more than a long list of complaints about the king. Look at the way it starts. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, that's a lot of we. This isn't just founding-era poetry. It's a declaration, the first of public sovereignty. In these United States, the people are the source of all power. We are the active agents of our lives. We are what animate history. No exceptions. The challenge, as of late, is that too many have forgotten that we are the boss and are imbued with righteous power. With that power, if we want change, there is a wide spectrum of ways to make it happen. Remember, we the people, especially in New England, were so fed up with the powers that be that, after 169 years of British rule, they took up arms in 1776. And nearly every 70 to 100 years since, we have faced a major rupture. The Civil War, the Great Depression, the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, and its aftermath, which today is part of that rupture. Each crisis reshaped the republic. Each time, the people had to remember where sovereignty truly lives. Each time, the people had to reclaim their power from a bunch of pretenders. So no, the Declaration of Independence is not just some old, moldy document. It is a reminder for those who might be angry, frustrated, or disillusioned. A reminder that we the people not only have the right but the responsibility to set things right. Story 66. Remember when we had a king or dictator, and they said if we did not have the vaccine and booster shots, we could not go to barbecues for the 4th of July. If we did have them, we could have a barbecue with a limit of 5 people. Story 67. Donald Trump is one of the best presidents we have ever had and has helped restore the freedoms that the Democratic Party has tried to take away from Americans. Story 68. As a United Kingdom citizen in the United States legally, I am very glad to be here. Despite the Patriot Act affecting our constitutional protections, we still have free speech here and the freedom to bear arms. The United Kingdom still has a king and a House of Lords that serves as that nation's Senate. You can certainly feel the difference because they have no protected free speech, and their police have dragged away fathers who were unarmed, trying to protect their underage daughters from imminent rape, pregnancy as a result of rape, vile sexual abuse with objects, and murder by criminal gangs. These fathers were arrested by the police to silence them. A woman is serving 3 years in jail after posting on social media that she would not care if someone burned down illegal immigrant hotels. Note that she did not directly call for violence in her statement, but she was still sentenced to more jail time than some actual child rapists. Story 69. Every word of it applies. Our government has failed us. Read it today. Understand what you have lost. It took 20 years to get rid of King George III. Story 70. Honestly, I feel like the idealization of the Founding Fathers and the Declaration of Independence is a major reason why America cannot progress politically. They were just a group of people trying to figure things out, and they did not have all the answers. Story 71. Whenever Donald Trump looks at the Declaration of Independence, he thinks that he could have ended the Civil War without fighting because he is just that special. Seriously, he honestly said that. He thinks the Declaration of Independence ended the Civil War. Story 72. We have a president. Why do people call him a king? This is not the United Kingdom with princes and queens. We have a real president elected by the majority. It is Independence Day. Take care of yourself and your family. Enjoy the few summers you have left. We only get a few turns around the sun. Let go of anger and hate. Story 73. It really is a bad time to be celebrating independence. I'm ashamed to be an American. We are an embarrassment on the world stage. I'm wondering when it will be fitting to start seeking political asylum elsewhere. As a staunch Democrat, I no longer feel safe from my government. With the president actually saying out loud into a microphone that he hates Democrats, I believe we've crossed a threshold that will be impossible to come back from. Hate to be a doomsayer, but to put it bluntly, this situation is unbelievable. So yeah, I'll go have a hot dog and watch fireworks. But to answer the original poster's question, I believe that document is nothing more than a symbol of what we have all lost. Story 74. The Declaration of Independence is not worth the paper it is written on in this administration. It will probably be auctioned off along with millions of acres of public lands by the end of the year. Story 75. I am unsure because first we would need to clean it thoroughly from every person who has treated it disrespectfully. Story 76. I'll just say that it is telling how supporters of Make America Great Again lose their composure every year when National Public Radio reads the Declaration on air, thinking it is about the 45th president. Story 77. It is a good reminder of unity and love that we all share. Thank you for helping me understand what that document is about. Story 78. It does not. We should all be burning the flag today or flying it upside down. I will not celebrate the signing of the Declaration. I will be grieving its death. Story 79. Make America Great Again is currently guilty of at least 4 of the grievances. Red counties make up 30% of the United States gross domestic product and therefore about that percentage of the tax base. To recap, Make America Great Again is gambling someone else's money on a historically bad platform. Story 80. This country has always been a deeply evil place, and it is not going to change anytime soon. It was built on the backs of enslaved people dragged across an ocean, and any change from that status quo has only occurred through bloodshed. Story 81. It is about to be renamed Trump Day next year. Long live the king. That is what you voted for. Story 82. The current administration is what the revolutionaries fought against. Our country was never great. We are literally a country of immigrants harming the very people who make the backbone of this country. I hate it here, and I can honestly say I have never been proud to be American. Current events only confirm my point. Story 83. I think that the average American is not literate enough to read and comprehend the Declaration of Independence. Story 84. Today marks the end of the United States of America with the passing of the Big Beautiful Bill. We will not be able to recover from this disastrous legislation. Story 85. We have gone from no taxation without representation to taxation with the only representation being for the interests of the ultra-wealthy and large corporations. Story 86. It is laughable but not at the same time. It is a mix of sadness, embarrassment, and disappointment, with some sarcastic humor. Story 87. I think if there is any hope, it is right now before Immigration and Customs Enforcement has more funding than the United States Marine Corps and becomes a paramilitary secret police. Riot. Story 88. Regarding no taxation without representation, immigrants and visa holders pay income tax, Social Security tax, Medicare tax, and state income tax but have no voting rights. They receive minimal government services and are not eligible for Social Security or Medicare benefits despite contributing directly to these programs. Additionally, they either endure a hostile government or must remain satisfied with an indifferent one without any ability, vote, or voice in influencing policy. Story 89. Seeing as Donald Trump is exercising the powers granted to the executive branch, just like every other president has, I do not know what to say. I am not a supporter of Donald Trump, but this king rhetoric is silly and historically ignorant. Go look up Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln. Story 90. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The history of the present king is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has made judges dependent on his will alone. He has cut off our trade with all parts of the world. He has transported us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. He has excited domestic insurrections among us. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states by obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Story 91. The United States was created as a colonial genocidal slave state and continues to operate as such as long as self-interest allows. Story 92. In all the protests, among all the protesters, all the Trump supporters and MAGA hat-wearing fanatics, and all the bystanders living in the United States, from the newly immigrated to the longtime residents, to the American Indians whose ancestors were here long before anyone arrived, to the illegal immigrants struggling to cross into this country or trying to hide and remain, we all agree at our core on one basic idea from that declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We may not agree entirely on the exact meaning of these words, but we are united by them. Every major struggle in the United States since before the Civil War is arguably about the fights we have had in interpreting these words. What does it mean to have slaves in a country that professes this grand declaration? What about women not having the right to vote? How can you reconcile racial injustice or injustice against members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community in light of our central creed? Even today, how can you justify the deportation of illegal immigrants in light of this creed, which we hold to apply to everyone universally across the entire world, across all time, as self-evident as water being wet or the sky being blue? We are unique among all countries for being founded on these words. This almost civic religious creed of faith is the very core reason why our country exists. Unlike various other declarations of the rights of man that were adopted by pre-existing countries settled largely to protect their own heritage and culture, the United States will endure because we are united on this point. We often do not agree on what this point means practically, which is why we fight the most raucous fights. Fights you only see among family members rather than strangers. No one will ever be fully satisfied with the state of affairs in the United States because our creed, the central civic religious tenet many people around the world would want to adopt as their own, aspires to a form of perfectionism, an idealized perfect honoring of our individual agency and right to live our lives with whom we love and in the way we want, that can never, in practice, be achieved on this plane of existence. The grievances toward the king are interesting because, in reality, what the colonists were rebelling against was not having any recourse in Great Britain when Parliament and the king refused to honor the original colonial charters and started unilaterally imposing themselves without any sort of Supreme Court or representation in Parliament to appeal to. The Boston Tea Party's rebellion was not over a tax, but over not having a representative in Parliament who could argue on their behalf, a king willing to listen to them, or a judicial system they could appeal to. The tax imposed by the royal governor was what you do when occupying a conquered people, not treating citizens with equality. We are not a conquered people. You do have a voice. Use it. Story 93. I think betrayal has always been a core American issue. That and harming others so the wealthy do not have to pay taxes. The current administration remains true to those guiding principles introduced long ago. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.